I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining, yet we are supposed to believe that you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. Now, what I want to go through is to talk about why you are a failure and why, honestly, we just need to tell you bye-bye. I know that you got a little upset and you put on your show for your boss because it seems like you're trying to save your job when it came to talking to Senator Booker yesterday. But let's go through some of your failures. So before you were even confirmed, and I think one of my colleague from Georgia, pointed out that you are already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. Mind you, these cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his handpicked FBI director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe. I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacists, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. And frankly, my colleagues have been real nice to you today, and I applaud them, but I don't have the same demeanor because I know that multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues. And frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. And I know my colleagues have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way. Number one, I have a couple of UCs. Kim Buck, one of multiple Republicans receiving death threats for voting against Jim Jordan as House Speaker.
Without objection.
Another one, Republican lawmaker says she received death threats after voting against Jim Jordan in Speaker's race.
Without objection.
In addition, there was another one from another colleague who now is leaving Congress because they said that they were calling his wife anonymously and threatening her life to the extent that she ended up sleeping with a firearm.
Without objection.
Okay, so here's the deal. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs? You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. You're getting rid of your most qualified people, and even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner to the extent that you posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice erroneously as it relates to catching somebody, and then you want to go and say, let me take a victory lap. Because honestly, if it wasn't for parents deciding that they were going to turn in their child, it seems like y'all wouldn't have got there, even though he literally confessed online. So I'm confused about what it is that the FBI is doing except for trying to put on a show for the apprentice or whatever you want to call him. The day after all of this took place, there was domestic terrorism that was taking place at HBCUs. They were targeted. Yet I didn't hear anything from the FBI about what was going on. And again, black people kept saying, how did we end up in this? Because the numbers are so very clear that white supremacy is a problem. And honestly, I've not heard anything out of you today that makes me believe that you're going to do anything about the white supremacy problem, the one that is leading to children being killed, children being shot, as well as members of their community as they're worshiping in their churches.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. If the gentleman would like to respond to any of that. Well, I mean, I'll respond. Kash Patel, as I said when I introduced him, public defender, former prosecutor, top staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, Deputy Director of National Intelligence with the National Security Council, Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, and FBI Director. I think that's pretty good resume for the guy who's now the running the top law enforcement agency in our country. And we've seen all the stats that he's given to the committee on how much better they're doing at getting the bad guys than the previous guy was doing. With that, I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina.
One thing y'all have not said thus far as I can tell, is y'all may have amnesia about this mandate. You know, y'all kept talking about how President Trump was reelected and it was a mandate. And y'all aren't talking about the campaign promises. The campaign promise that he made. You see, when we had the Democrats out there, we weren't promising anything about the Epstein files. For all I know, our DOJ was invested in making sure that they could continue to reveal other people that should be held liable. Instead, it was your side that made this a campaign promise. So to now say that we are playing political games when we know that he actually ran on this is a farce. That's number one. Number two, everyone on this committee and everyone in Congress should have an issue with the fact that right now we know that Ghislaine Maxwell has not only been transferred out of her housing in Florida down to somewhere that looks probably a little bit more like Mar-a-Lago in Texas, but now there are conversations about pardoning her. So I think that the American people should have full transparency about what took place when you're talking about someone who went in front of a grand jury and was found to have enough information to go forward and indict her, and then she was convicted, and then she was given 20 years, yet the president is in talks about potentially letting a convicted sex offender out. That's number two. Number three, I don't know if any of y'all took the time to sit down with any of these survivors, but let me be clear. These survivors have made it abundantly clear to us that there was cooperation at all levels of government, and they are talking about fake immigration papers. And they're talking about fake modeling agencies. For all we know, there are people that are still embedded in our federal government that allowed for this to take place, that were profiting from this. So yes, this is relevant to what we're talking about. The fourth thing that I want to say is I'm tired of y'all cherry picking one horrible event. Because that's what y'all do. Y'all find one terrible situation that took place, and then you say that person's name, and you wear it out, and you make it political. The reality is this. I got a few names for you if you want to start going through names, and you tell me which one of these names you've decided to do any type of legislation behind. We've got Virginia Guthrie. We've got Annie Farmer. We've got Maria Farmer. We've got Courtney Wild, Michelle Licata, Jenna Lisa Jones, Jennifer Araz, Sarah Ransom, Shantae Davies, Carolyn Adriano. And the reality is that it's our understanding that there may be close to 1,000 victims of Epstein, Maxwell, and others. So stop playing these games and acting like you care about one particular situation. You take a situation and then you exploit what has happened to not only that person, but you exploit those families and you make it a game. Stop just throwing a random dead person's name on something for your own political expediency. If you want to start talking about actually solving something, then maybe we should go to the other campaign promises, the ones that allegedly gave y'all a mandate. When he said he was going to lower prices on day one, yet that didn't happen. When he said that he was going to be ending wars on day one, yet that didn't happen. Where he said that he was going to save the American people, yet that didn't happen. Because as we know, in that big ugly bill that every single one of you voted for, except for Mr. Massey, because he seemingly is the only one that's got any sense over there, y'all voted for that bill. And the last time I checked, it's driving us further into debt while kicking people off of their health care, in addition to making sure that billionaires, which I would not be surprised if we start to roll out those names, and a number of those same billionaires, because these weren't they weren't $2 Johns. That's not what I got from the information. So stop telling us that you care. Show us that you care. Show those survivors that you care. Sign the daggone discharge petition, sit down and hear their stories, and then tell them to their faces that because your leader does not want to talk about this, that is who you have pledged your loyalty to and your fealty to, and you're not going to protect them, and you're not going to protect others that are suffering right now and others that will suffer in the future, and I will yield. This administration is racist. That he has always been a racist, And that is what we are enduring in this country. Let me give you some facts behind this racism. And they get mad when I say the things that I say, but I will not stop speaking the truth. Number one, I said that what we were experiencing in this country felt like what I would imagine slave patrols to look like. And frankly, anybody that knows anything about slave patrols, this is exactly what it was like. We're talking about lawless people that are going around with no warrants or anything, and it's all about rounding people up and disappearing them. That is what's currently taking place. And interestingly enough, even though modern day policing was born out of slave patrols, when I was speaking with one of my friends who is a federal law enforcement officer, he told me that one of the things that he has observed is that the culture is created at the top. And when I think about it, it absolutely makes sense. If you have somebody at the top that will not tolerate the types of things that we're seeing, then maybe those under you won't do it. But we know that we have a racist at the top. He has called himself the head law enforcement agent in this country, and therefore everybody has decided that it is okay to take off their hoods and mask up as ICE agents. Now, we've talked about how they have hidden themselves, but again, it reminds me of the Klan. That is why I proposed the Clear ID Act, to make them identify themselves, because it is dangerous for law enforcement as well as individuals, because you don't know, especially with ICE going around and doing the things that thugs do. They're busting out windows, they're breaking into homes, they're breaking people's arms. This doesn't sound like law enforcement. It sounds like thuggery to me. But just like you can have somebody at the top that sets the tone for ugliness going down, you guys are blessed, because in the city of Chicago, you have a mayor. You have a mayor that has decided that he will not back down. He will not bend to this administration, and instead he will stand up for the people. You have a man of valor that is going up against a villain, and I think that we have to make sure, especially while we're in his city, that we recognize his leadership, because it is invaluable. Now, some people think that this is all about Chicago, but I want people to understand that this cancer is infecting us everywhere, and if you don't think that it can come to your city, well, I've got news for you. You see, we've been talking about the cruel and unusual punishment that is in violation of the 8th Amendment that is being handed out. And honestly, it's a spit in the face of every American that we have an actual convicted felon that feels aggrieved to the extent that he feels like he's owed hundreds of millions of dollars when people are literally dying under our watch. Recently, I just sent a letter, it looks like on October 22nd, to Kristi Noem. And one of the things that I laid out is that we have seen the most detainee deaths in ICE custody in a single year in decades, with 20 deaths in the last 9 months compared to 24 deaths in the past prior 4 years. Now, this week, we learned that an individual who went to the Dallas ICE field office for a routine visit, meaning that they were doing things the quote-unquote right way, they were detained. They knew that this individual had diabetes and required insulin every 2 hours. Despite ICE having been told this, the individual was denied access to their medication for 8 days, resulting in hospitalization. There are some that say that we are making America great. But to me, it doesn't feel like greatness. It feels like grossness. That's right. And in fact, I want to ask a few questions, and it doesn't matter who answers them. Is it great or gross to go into people's houses and drag them out in the middle of the night?
Gross. Gross.
Is it great or gross to make people afraid to do something as simple as go to school?
Gross.
Is it great or gross to make hard-working people say, I am too scared to show up to my job?
Gross.
If you didn't know, we ended up winning a special election in Arizona. Our newest member, who has not been sworn in, Congresswoman-elect Grijalva is ready to sign and be the 218th signature on the discharge petition. Now, for those of you that don't know what a discharge petition is, let me tell you, it's usually just a messaging tool. We usually do not get the number of signatures that we need to override the speaker. The speaker is the only one that can really, for the most part, put bills on the floor. There are exceptions, and this is one of those exceptions. And basically, think of it like if your state has a petition process, if the people that are elected into office don't want to file bills or pass bills that you want, but let's say you want same day voter registration or online voter registration, and your state allows you to do something, or we saw the ballot initiatives around reproductive access. We saw that happen in Ohio. We saw it happen in Missouri and so many of these other red states where their elected leaders would not put anything on the floor. So the people had to rise up. So we in the House, we basically have that same opportunity. If there's something that the body of members actually wants to put forward, then it takes 218 signatures. Right now we have 217. The 218th signature will be Representative-elect Grijalva's signature. But since we're not in session, and since we shut down, they've made all the excuses in the world not to swear her in, and they could have swore her in just yesterday, doing what we call a pro forma session. So they opted not to. So I also think that they are buying time right now. And what they are trying to do is twist the arms of the 4 Republicans that did sign on to the discharge petition, trying to get somebody to come off the discharge petition before Grijalva is sworn in, because then they will have to put it on the floor and they will absolutely have to take a vote. But I am so happy you asked this question, because we will not be distracted. We need to be able to walk and chew gum. And the reality is that we just heard my junior senator from the state of Texas talk about protecting pedophiles. It was some kind of slip of the mouth, but that's what he said. We got to protect the pedophiles. We know that the last time Trump was in office, he ended up having a sweep. And that's one of the reasons that he is trying to redraw the lines, because he is old enough to remember history. He knew that in the midterms, and he wasn't even as bad. He was bad, but he wasn't this bad. The last time, he ended up losing over 40 seats. So that's why he's trying to rig the system so that hopefully he can still maintain control. Because if you let the Democrats get control, you ain't got to worry about the Epstein files. We gonna go get them, right? And even if Pam Bondi and them don't want to turn it over, don't worry about it. We get courts for that, and we will absolutely head to court with these valid subpoenas, and we will get court orders, and we will have people held in contempt, and we will do all the things. So give us some power so that we can start doing some digging and figuring out what all did Elon do with y'all's information? Where all did it go? And who all did he fire? And why did he fire them? And how many people have been fired just out of simple retaliation? And let's take a look at these vindictive prosecutions that they are engaging in. The one thing that Trump is afraid of more than anything right now is real accountability, and the Democrats can usher that in. I sit on both the committees of main jurisdiction. We'll be ushering that in, oversight and judiciary. So it's important that we show up and we just keep voting every single election. As I sat and listened to the beginning of this debate, my heart simply broke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of my bill, H.R. 4922, the D.C. Crimes Act. Rather than prioritizing the safety of law-abiding and protecting the lives of innocent residents and visitors, district officials have actively facilitated dysfunction and chaos through their progressive soft-on-crime policies. Instead of addressing the clear epidemic of youth crime in the city, the D.C. City Council increased the age of youth offenders to individuals 24 years old and younger, meaning fully grown legal adults in the District of Columbia can receive sentences meant for children. This is simply insane, and that is why I introduced the D.C. Crimes Act, which lowers the definition of youth from under the age of 25 to under the age of 18, removes the ability of judges to sentence youth offenders below mandatory minimum guidelines, and requires the D.C. Attorney General to establish a public website containing much-needed statistics on juvenile crime in D.C. The Trump administration's efforts have shown that lawlessness is a choice, and it is time for Congress to step up, adhere to our constitutional duty, and firmly address crime in the nation's capital.
Many people know me for being able to do alliterations, and all I could think about was amnesia allows adolescent accountability avoidance agility from across the aisle. So work with me for a second. Imagine being a young man born to Jamaican and Panamanian parents who messed up not once but twice. Imagine standing in front of a judge with your whole future hanging in the balance, and instead of prison, you are given a promise of mercy. Your record gets wiped clean. You get a second chance at life. Now imagine taking that promise and turning it into promotion. You go to college, you get a job, and even become a member of Congress. That's what redemption looks like. That's what America is supposed to be about. And that is exactly the story of the next wannabe governor from Florida. As a young man, he went through pretrial diversion for misdemeanor marijuana possession. As an adult, yet younger than 24, he was charged with and ultimately placed on probation for felony bribery charges, which ultimately were 2 expunged. He was given a 3rd chance, and now he's the face of a bill that would not afford young people in Washington, D.C. the same opportunities afforded to him. Let me be real. If he had grown up under Donald Trump's America or under the very D.C. crime bill he's pushing today, he wouldn't be standing here as a member of Congress. He'd still be living with the weight of those charges. So let's call this what it is, opportunities for me, but not for thee. He climbed the ladder of redemption, and now he's yanking it right up from the D.C. youth. See, most of us were taught to lift as you climb, but clearly some have forgotten to lift as they climb, and now they are committed to telling the next generation to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I will not sit quiet while a man who was saved by grace turns around and tries to snatch grace away from others. If we're going to be real about crime, about communities,
time
about...
has expired.
I'd like to yield for an additional minute, please.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
About second chances and even third chances, then it needs to start with us looking in the mirror and remembering that even the author of this bill has a story too before he tries to lecture DC on safety. And it would be complete hypocrisy to have, hypothetically, someone convicted of 34 felonies to lecture DC on what to do with youthful offenders who have been scientifically shown not to have fully developed brains under the age of 25, especially if said multi-count convicted felon was in his 70s when he was convicted. What would be his excuse? Because his brain would be fully developed. And with that, I will yield back.
It seems like we have consistently heard the refrain that Michael Jackson used to sing of why? And so I just want to be clear, because I have an opportunity to see so many people that I served with, and unlike the chair, I actually do recall a number of things, such as the fact that the state was grown by 95% people of color. I also recall, and I'm old enough to remember, when Texas lawmakers took pride in not being DC. I'm old enough to remember how you ignored the voices of people during the last redistricting. I'm old enough to remember that we were assured that we would have our own map done from the Texas House, yet we didn't. Instead, we took the Texas Senate map. I'm old enough to remember that we were assured that we would have 2 new seats, one in the DFW area and one in the Harris-Fort Bend area. I am old enough to remember that we acknowledged that the Latino community absolutely was entitled to another seat under the Voting Rights Act. I am old enough to remember when we fought the current maps, because while 95% of the growth was due to people of color, not only did they create 2 new Anglo-majority seats that are approximately 766,000 people each, y'all paired the 9th and 18th congressional districts, and we had to fight to unpair them. I am old enough to remember that I testified in court about a month ago, and the state took the position that they didn't consider race when they created the maps that we're currently sitting under. I am old enough to remember that this legislature has consistently been found to be intentionally racially discriminatory in the drawing of its maps ever since the Voting Rights Act was enacted. I am also old enough to remember that it was a great Texan that signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965 into law. So,
please finish your testimony.
Yes, to comply with the Voting Rights Act, we should have 60% of the seats that allow people of color to elect their representatives. That would be 24 seats. Instead, we currently only have 14. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. I am asking you, in the words of MLK, where will you stand?
Thank you for your testimony.
Representative Wu, recognized to question the panel.
Thank you. This question is for everyone here. The preface is we've been trying to find out why we're here. The chair says that he knows jurisdictionally what the authority is that we're here, but not exactly what we're supposed to be doing. The governor has not really said anything other than he wants to eliminate coalition districts. Could you tell us, do you support districts made up of coalitions of all races, that black, white, Asian, Latino, everyone together, coming together to pick their people, pick the person that they want, no matter who that person happens to be? Do you support that, and do you think that should be protected?
Yes, Representative Wu, I do support coalition districts, and as I testified, all 13 districts currently held by a Democratic member of Congress are districts where a coalition of minority voters elect their candidate of choice. And therefore, if this panel does, as President Trump has suggested or stated, that he would like to remove 5 Democratic members and replace them with 5 Republican members, you will be intentionally dismantling coalition districts in violation of the Voting Rights Act and the needs and desires of the people of Congressional District 7 and districts throughout the state.
I echo the points that were just made, but I want to say that while we've been talking about law and there's a number of lawyers that are sitting here, we understand what the Voting Rights Act stands for. We also understand that there's a little thing called the Constitution that some people in D.C. want to ignore. The reality is that we are simply seeking representation of all people in Texas. All 30 million people should have a voice in the policies that are made. And frankly, when you live in a democracy, if you have a problem because you don't want to answer to your poor policies, then maybe come up with better policies. But at the end of the day, we absolutely should not be going out of our way to do what this legislature is consistently been found to be guilty of doing, which is to make sure that they can do an overemphasis of Anglo voices in this state. Only 40% of this state is Anglo, yet somehow we have more than 60% of our seats that are elected by Anglo majority districts. As I said in 2021, as I argued against these maps, the math ain't mathing. Yeah, well,